Hey guys, welcome back, and today we're going to be going over the Magicka Nightblade. The Magicka Nightblade is in a solid spot, and it's one of my favorite classes to solo on. It's got a lot of incoming life from its abilities and from the gear that we're going to put on it, making it really good at surviving in all types of encounters. The great thing about this build is that it's not going to require any trial gear. I'm going to give you 3 different loadouts, one for the people that don't have DLC, one for people that don't want to go beyond dungeons, and then one for people that are willing to do trials. In the end, there's a gear loadout for everybody, and this build is going to be capable of doing all content in the game, just like all of my builds. It's also going to be accompanied by an incredible written guide linked in the description down below, so be sure to utilize that, take advantage of that. It's very convenient. You just hover over gear and it tells you where that gear drops, what weight it is, and all that kind of stuff. Just by hovering over it. Same with the skills, it tells you where it's at, so take advantage of the written guide. All right guys, now let's jump into the build. First up, for the race, you can go high elf for the most DPS possible. You can also go dark elf. They're very good, well-rounded class, which allows you to go stamina later, but high elf is going to be the most performant. Breton is also a fantastic choice, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of soloing. Breton has amazing sustain. They're always going to be a really nice choice for solo content. As for the Mundus, while we're soloing, we're going to use Lover Mundus, and this way we don't have to go find a source of major breach on the build, and it felt really good. We had enough penetration in solo content to feel very powerful without having to go and get caltrops in PvP. I know you guys hate going and getting caltrops, so I found a way to make the build work without it. And when you jump into group content, then go ahead and slot Thief Mundus. Like if you're gonna do a dungeon, it's fine, you don't need to change it, but if you ever start doing raids and stuff like that, you're gonna want to put on that Thief Mundus, take off the Ring of the Pale Order. As for the attributes, we're gonna use all 64 points in Magicka. The more Magicka you have, the more damage you do, so we want to really pump that up. As for the food, I'm gonna recommend Ghastly Eyeball. Ghastly Eyeball is going to be perfect. It's gonna give you 5,000 Magicka, and it's also gonna give you 500 Magicka regen, thereabouts, right? Which means you have a ton more Magicka, which means you're doing more damage with every cast, and it's also taking you a lot longer to run out of Magicka. And actually, in the content that I was testing this in, I was not able to run out of my resources. This was a really well-balanced build. It really felt good this time around. As for our consumables, you've got 2 types of potions that you could use. One is Essence of Magicka. That's the cheap potion. You can either buy it at guild traders for next to nothing, or you can find it on mobs when you kill them. It's just Essence of Magicka potion. It's just going to give you some Magicka and a little bit of sustain, and they don't last very long, but they're perfectly fine for overland content, and they're great for getting in the habit of using your potion every time it's off cooldown. That's going to be very important at getting good at ESO, is using that potion anytime that you're in combat. Next potion that you can use is the Essence of Spell Power potion. This is also a really important potion. This one gives you major sorcery though, and it's going to increase your spell damage by 20%. That's a massive buff, right? So don't underestimate this potion. Whenever you're doing something hard, these buffs that it gives you are substantial. So if you're going into veteran content, if you're going into a solo arena, right, anywhere where you feel like you need to try, go ahead and pop these things on. They are expensive, so use them sparingly when it comes to like easy content, but like later when you get experience at the game, you'll almost always have these things going. The next buff that these give you is Major Prophecy. That's going to increase your crit chance. Next, we have Restore Magicka immediately and Major Intellect, which increases our recovery by 30%. All right, for the gear, we're going to go ahead and give you 3 different loadouts. They'll all be on the website, and as always, I highly encourage you to use the websites to put the gear together. It shows you all the pieces of gear, where to wear them, what weights, where to find the gear. If you hover over the gear, it tells you where it drops, what dungeon, what trial, all of that kind of stuff. It tells you everything you need to know about the gear when you hover over it. Great website, so be sure to take advantage of the website. Link in the description down below. I'll also link it in a pinned comment. Okay, so 3 loadouts. One is going to be for people that are willing to do trials. One is going to be for people that don't want to do trials. And one is going to be for people that don't have access to DLC content. I've got you covered. No matter what type of player you are, you're going to be able to do all the content in the game that you want to do. All of these builds are going to be very effective. Don't worry about not using the trial gear. That's totally unnecessary. It's overkill for almost all of the content, and it's not that much better than the non-trial gear version, so don't sweat it. For the first thing is the monster set. For the monster set, we're going to use 1-piece Slime Craw whenever we're wearing the Ring of the Pale Order. If you're not wearing Ring of the Pale Order or don't have access to the Ring of the Pale Order, then go ahead and use Ice Heart. This is a great solo set. It gives you a protective shield frequently to protect you from taking damage from enemies when, you know, you don't have Ring of the Pale Order. Ring of the Pale Order heals you a lot though. So we're going to wear 1-piece Slime Craw when we're wearing Ring of the Pale Order. We're going to wear Ice Heart if we're not. And then for the body is the gear that's going to change based on what type of content you're willing to do, right? So if you're willing to do trials, then I highly recommend Horror of the Depths. This is an amazing proc set. It does a ton of damage whenever you light attack your enemy. It will occasionally proc and create this whirlwind of water underneath them. So make sure to stand the enemy in the whirlwind of water, stand in that, and make sure they're standing in it so that they take the damage from it over time. As for the jewelry and the weapons, we're going to use Pillar of Nirn. It works in a very similar fashion. It procs occasionally when you're attacking the enemies. Both of these sets have really good stats. Weapon damage lines, Minor Slayer, weapon damage again, right? And Pillar of Nirn has critical chance, weapon and spell damage, right? And then a massive proc. So great stats on both of these sets. If I didn't mention it earlier, Slime Crawl we're wearing because this is the highest source of crit chance that you can get from a one-piece set in the game. So when you're going to wear one piece on your head, this is the path to the most damage, is your Slime Crawl. Weapons, same thing. We're going to use 2 daggers, Pillar of Nirn. If you want to, you can also use a staff, Pillar of Nirn, instead of the daggers. That's totally fine. If you want to make this a staff build, that's okay. I'll put a note on the website on how to change it into a staff build. Basically, you're going to drop one of the dual wield abilities that we're wearing and pick up your staff spammable. And then for the back bar, we're going to wear the Maelstrom Inferno staff on all of the builds if you're able to get it. If not, well, then you just wear whatever you're wearing on the front bar on the back bar. Just double up. Maelstrom Inferno staff buffs our Wall of Elements. It's a really solid weapon, great for your back bar. It's also going to be proccing your weapon enchant, which is giving you more spell damage, right? It's there's so much going on with Wall of Elements and the Maelstrom Inferno staff, so definitely take advantage of that. And if you're not willing to do trials, or you don't want to do trials, I get it. Don't worry. Instead of wearing Horror of the Depths, go ahead and wear Auroran's Thunder. Auroran's Thunder is another set that does almost as much damage as Horror of the Depths, and it's farmed in a dungeon. It's got great stats on it, right? So we've parsed it out. It performs almost just as well as Horror of the Depths, you know, just a little bit worse. So if you don't want to do trials, it's perfect. And for the ring and the jewelry, we're going to leave Pillar of Nirn. That's a dungeon set, right? So you keep wearing that. As for the third and final loadout, if you don't have access to DLC content or you don't want to do DLC content, no worries. Go ahead and use Ice Heart for your monster set. Order's Wrath on the body. For the jewelry and weapons, Briarheart on the front and the back bar. And then if you're able to, go ahead and go to the Maelstrom Arena and replace your back bar Briarheart with the Maelstrom staff. Again, this is all written on the website. It's so much easier to follow these gear layouts on the website than it is here, because you can hover over the items, find out where they're dropping, and it tells you where they are slotted and what weight they are and what enchants and what traits you need to put on them all, right? Definitely take advantage of the website. We put a lot of work into that. Next up, we're going to talk about the skills. The first skill on our bar is going to be Deadly Cloak. The great thing about Deadly Cloak is it's a skill that does a ton of damage, but it's a dot that sticks to you. So if the enemy moves and you chase it, then you keep pulsating, doing this damage, and you don't have to reapply this dot. So it's a set it and forget it kind of dot. You use it, and then 20 seconds later, you use it again. Another great thing about this skill is it costs stamina, so it's great for our Magicka sustain. It's going to be really hard to run out of Magicka on this build once you get it up and running, and once you get those passives, and of course, once you're using the food and the potions that we recommend here. But this is a skill that keeps on giving, right? The other thing that's great about it is that it gives you major evasion for 20 seconds, reducing damage from area attacks by 20%. That's huge, man. 20% reduction in damage taken from AoE abilities is a massive reduction. You don't get 20% damage reduction very often in ESO. The next ability is going to be Swallow Soul. Swallow Soul is fantastic for a couple of reasons. One, it's a nice spammable. It's very easy to use. It feels good to weave, but it's also ranged. You can use it when you're not near the enemy, and it's going to heal you for 37% of the damage. That's huge. That's huge. So your spammable also heals you, which feels great. It's very nice. We like that. That's one of the reasons it's going to be so intuitive. It's easy to pick up this build and start playing as a new player. You just go ahead and you get this skill right away, Swallow Soul. You morph it into this version here that heals you when you use it, and it just feels good. You kill things and heal yourself at the same time. The next ability is going to be Impale. Impale is our execute. So when the enemy gets below 25%, we start using this, and it deals 330% more damage at that point. So it starts doing mega damage when the enemy is below 25% health. You do not want to use this ability before the enemy reaches 25% health. So wait until they get to 25% or below and then start using this ability. Keep up your dots, but then when the dots are ticking, you're going to be using Impale. And then when it gets really low, you know, you can go ahead and just finish it off with your Impales. The next ability on the front bar is going to be Barbed Trap. We use Barbed Trap for a lot of reasons. One, it's one of the hardest hitting single target dots in the game. If you've used any of my builds before, you know how much we love this ability in the game right now. It's just so powerful and so necessary for a lot of reasons. It's costing stam on a mag build. That's great. It's good for our sustain. It's also doing a ton of damage. Perhaps most importantly is that it's a fighter skilled ability. So we're getting fighter skilled passives for having it slotted, which means we're getting extra ult regen. We're getting extra weapon and spell damage. And if it needs to do anything else, it's also increasing our critical damage by 10%. We're getting that minor force buff anytime this is activated. Huge ability, really powerful. Can't recommend it enough right now in the current meta, so definitely take advantage of this one. Next, we have Merciless Resolve. Merciless Resolve is the Nightblade semi-spammable. A lot of classes have semi-spammables. The Warden has the Beetles. The Necro has the Blast Bones. And the Nightblade has Merciless Resolve. So what you do is every time you get 5 light attacks, you have charged up your Merciless Resolve, and then you can fire it off for big damage. Each stack of Merciless Resolve that you get by light attacking, so if you every time you light attack, you get 1 stack, and each stack gives you a 60 weapon and spell damage. So that's good, right? 5 times 60, 300 weapon and spell damage bonus if you just sit on those stacks, which isn't a horrible thing to do. You know, if you don't want to manage them, and then just keep the skill active. You only have to cast it once every 40 seconds. So it's a very long buff, and you can just sit on the 5 stacks and hold on to that 300 damage. But if you're willing to micromanage it and fire it off every time you get those 5 stacks, it does big damage. You always want to try to use it after you do your incapacitating strike. We'll talk about that when we get in the rotation section, but you'll get about 2, if you're light attack weaving effectively, you'll get about 2 Merciless Resolve procs per ultimate proc. So you'll do Merciless Resolve by itself, then you'll do ultimate, and then Merciless Resolve, and then Merciless Resolve by itself, right? That's going to be kind of the cadence you get when you get kind of effective at light attack weaving on this build. Merciless Resolve also, besides doing massive damage when you do fire it off, 14,500 unbuffed, huge, it also heals you for 50% of the damage done. So it's a massive heal. It's another ability, right? So we've got Swallow Soul healing us, we've got this healing us, and then we've got Incapacitating Strike, our ultimate. Ravage an enemy with Swift Strike, dealing tons of damage and causing them to take 20% more damage from your attacks for 6 seconds, which makes Nightblades really good at burst damage, right? They have really good burst windows because for 6 seconds, they do 20% increased damage, which is huge in ESO. If you cast with a 120 ultimate or more, the enemy is going to be stunned for 3 seconds. And so if you use this on an enemy and it just stuns, it's because you held on to the ultimate for a while, longer than you needed to, right? Because this is a really cheap ultimate. That's the thing about this. You should use it on the thickest mob near you anytime you can. You don't need to save this ultimate for bosses because you're going to get it so often. So I really encourage you, anytime you're fighting a really thick mob with lots of HP, use it on it. Even if it's not a boss, you will get the ultimate again when you run into the boss, okay? Because it comes back fast. While slotted, you gain Major Reeve, which restores 100 mag and stam when you deal damage with a light and heavy attack on an enemy. So this is a great ability for so many reasons. It's, you know, we're going to be double barring this ultimate, and we don't do that very often, but the reason is because it's so powerful. Just having it slotted is so effective for your sustain, giving you 100 mag and stam every time you do damages with a light attack, and also class passives, which we'll get into later. But just having this slotted is giving you extra damage for all of your abilities. Really powerful. On the back bar, the first ability we're going to use is the Unstable Wall of Fire. Unstable Wall of Fire is just a really large AoE rectangle of damage. And when it expires, it explodes, doing a ton more damage. You can force it to expire early and explode by recasting it. So you can use this as kind of a big AoE spammable, where you just cast it, boom, 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 and knock down really low HP mobs if you want. I wouldn't do that against thick mobs or, you know, bosses, right? Because it's not really effective. But against, like, if you're fighting like 4 trash mobs or 5 trash mobs, you can just spam this, you know, maybe lay down your twisting path and then spam your wall of elements, and it's going to do really good damage to those mobs in that AoE area. And then once they're all, you know, melted down, or you're down to a couple of them, go into your other abilities, but really good for AoE damage. Another thing to mention about this Unstable Wall of Fire, because of weapon passives, when you kill things with this ability, it gives you a ton of Magicka back. So it's pretty good for your sustain when you're fighting fighting lots of little things. Really bad for your sustain if you use it and you're just fighting one big thing. And also it's not going to do very much damage. Twisting Path. Create a corridor of shadows for 12 seconds, granting you and allies major expedition. So this is going to give you and everybody in it 30% increased move speed. It's real easy to trip people up by giving them this massive move speed buff when they're not expecting it. Kind of funny to watch. You'll see people die from this all the time in the game, but it's a nice ability. It does really good AoE damage. It gives you move speed bonus whenever you want it. If you're running, you know, from one place to the next, you'll see it in this video playing right now. As I run through Vodashon Halls, I'll use this skill to give myself that 30% move speed buff when I'm trying to get to the next section. The next thing we're going to use is Dampen Magic. You can take Dampen Magic, or you could also take the other morph, which is Harness Magic. So like if you find yourself running out of Magicka, take Harness Magicka instead. That's going to give you slightly smaller shield, but it's going to give you Magicka back when you're hit while the shield's up. So you get a little bit of your Magicka back, really good for your sustain. But I found sustain to be really, my Magicka sustain was near unlimited on this build. So I wasn't really worried about that, so I took the biggest shield I could. Next, we have Dark Shade. Dark Shade is good for a couple of reasons. One is it's great damage. It does really incredible damage, so we want to use it for that alone. And it does AoE damage. Every once in a while it spins doing AoE damage, so it's good single target damage, phenomenal AoE damage, and it's going to inflict minor maim on your enemies, reducing their damage by 5%. So that's another 5% damage reduction, which is good for staying alive. It's one of the reasons the Nightblade's so good at it. On top of that, you know, there's some class passives we'll get into. Just having this ability slotted is doing big things for our damage, giving us extra Magicka, that kind of thing. Definitely really nice to have back here. The next ability on the back bar is going to be Debilitate. Sap an enemy's agility and wreck them with pain, dealing a ton of damage over 20 seconds. So it's just a really nice dot. It's even going to slow the enemy, which is nice, but it's also going to apply overcharge status effect, inflicting minor magic steal for 4 seconds. So good for your sustain. So it's doing damage and it's giving you minor Magicka steal, which means you have more Magicka coming back in. Great for a solo build, you know, to have that sustain. The only reason you'll die is if you, for some reason, run out of the Magicka needed to use your shield and your Swallow Soul. Because as long as you have Magicka, you can shield yourself and then you can heal by Swallow Souling. Plus, you know, because of the gear you're wearing, if you've got that Ring of the Pale Order, just putting dots on the enemy, just attacking the enemy, that's also going to be healing you. So you'll never die as long as you don't run out of resources, which is partly why we have Incapacitating Strike double barred. It's here again. While slotted, we get that Reeve. We also get that damage passive from the class lines. We'll talk about that in a second. It's nice. Infinite sustain, tons of damage. Just lots of fun to play the Magicka Nightblade in solo content. Next, we've got passives. Let's go ahead and go over the passives. This is kind of dry. You know, it beats reading it yourself, you know, so let this section of the video play while you're playing the game if you have to, but there's a lot to be learned from passives in ESO. In fact, passives are what differentiate one class from another in a lot of ways. This is where classes are kind of defined and what decides why we choose the skills that we put on the bars versus other skills. You know, passives in ESO are crazy powerful. Your character is the sum of your passives, really. There's not one passive that's mega powerful, but it's all the passives we take and how they add up that really make a character strong. All right, so Assassination, the first skill line for the Nightblade. The first one we've got is increase your physical and spell penetration by enemies by 2,900 and increase the duration of your stun from sneak by 100%. So the second part there doesn't matter, but the first part is nice. We get an extra 3,000 pen. It's part of why we're able to run without a source of major breach on this build. You know, we've got plenty of penetration from our light armor, from our Lover Mundus, and from this passive right here. Executioner. When an enemy dies within 2 seconds of being damaged by you, you restore 1,000 Magicka and stamina, right? So anytime an enemy you're attacking dies, you get 1,000 extra mag and stam. Great for sustain. Pressure points. Increase your weapon and spell critical ratings by 438 for each assassin ability slotted. Great reason to slot all of the abilities that we have here, which is we've got Impale, so that we get extra crit chance for that. We've got Merciless Resolve for that extra crit chance from that. And then finally, Incapacitating Strike is being double barred, partly because of this passive. Every one of these abilities we've slot, we get extra crit chance, right? Feels good. And then we've got Hemorrhage. Increase your critical damage by 10% when we have one of these abilities slotted. So we're getting crit chance and crit damage for having this ability slotted, which is one of the reasons we put it on both bars. Extra crit chance, extra crit damage, extra crit chance, extra crit damage, right? Both bars. Feels good. Dealing critical damage grants you and your group minor savagery, increasing your weapon critical rating by 1,300. So you get a little extra crit chance on your weapon, which is nice there. Then we've got Shadow, the second skill line for the Nightblade. Refreshing Shadows increases your health, stam, and mag by 15%. That's all it does. That's what it is. An extra 15% for all 3 sets. Easy. Casting a shadow ability grants major resolve for 6 seconds, increasing your physical and spell resistance by 6,000. So this is a good reason to use a couple of these abilities in here. And one of the reasons that if you want to do a little more damage, but have a little less healing, like if you feel like, man, I have no problem staying alive, especially with my Ring of the Pale Order, I don't need Swallow Soul, you could go ahead and use Concealed Weapon instead. This will give you basically 100% uptime on Major Resolve, making you really tanky. So you're getting a little less healing, but you're also taking less damage and dealing more damage. So Concealed Weapon is a great alternative spammable for this build. We've got Twisting Path also and Dark Shade. So we're constantly casting those and we're constantly proccing this extra Major Resolve uptime. Dark Vigor increases your max health by 3% for each shadow ability slotted. You know, on the back bar, what do we got? We got 2 of them, so we get 6% there. On the front bar, we don't have any, so we get 0% up here. No big deal. That's more of like something a tank would pay attention to. Dark Veil, increase the duration of your non-invisibility based shadow abilities by 2 seconds. So this is Twisting Path and Dark Shade for us. They're gonna last 2 seconds longer. That's great anytime you can extend the duration of a dot so it keeps hitting for that damage. Next, we've got Siphoning. We've got Catalyst. After drinking a potion, you gain 20 ultimate. So your ultimate only costs 72. So when you drink a potion, it gives you 1/3 of your ult back. This is part of the reason why the Nightblade gets their ult back so incredibly fast. This passive right here, not only do they have a cheap ultimate, but they get 1/3 of the ult back every time they drink a potion. And the Nightblade, just like every class, you're going to chug potions on cooldown when you're in combat. So every 45 seconds, you're going to get 1/3 of your ult back. And Magicka Flood, increase your Magicka, your max Magicka by 8% while Siphoning ability is slotted. So this is one of the reasons why we have a Siphoning ability on both bars. We've got Swallow Soul on the front bar, and then we've got Debilitate on the back bar. And this is why we have a Siphoning ability on both bars. It's so that we get that extra 8% max mag. And if you're not aware, your damage is in part based on the size of your Magicka pool on a Magicka build. So the more Magicka you have, the more damage all of your spells do. There's like, basically it equates out to every 1,000 Magicka equates to the same as adding 100 spell damage. So that's kind of how the formula works out. So the more Magicka you have, the more damage you do. So anytime you can increase it by a flat 8%, that's huge. We want to do that. This means all of our abilities are hitting quite a bit harder. Next, we have Soul Siphoner, increases your healing done by 3% for each Siphoning ability slotted. Again, this is kind of something that a healer would pay attention to. So any bonus we get from this passive is nice, but we're not going to focus on it. And then Transfer, casting a Siphoning ability while in combat generates 2 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 4 seconds. So another reason we're getting tons of ult back. A lot of classes have a passive that's kind of like this one, right? It's not super unique. Just kind of encourages you to use these abilities. Well, since our spammable on this build is Swallow Soul, we are constantly proccing this. Plus we have a dot, so you're going to be getting lots of your ultimate back. Next, we have the dual wield passives because we are running dual wield on the front bar. If you don't want to run dual wield on the front bar, that's okay. You could run a fire staff instead. And then the only thing you have to do is replace Deadly Cloak with any dot that you want to. Boom, you're good to go. You can just pick your favorite dot that you have access to and put it right here. Boom, you're using a fire staff on the front bar instead, and the build is almost as good. The reason we're using dual wield right now is because of Twin Blade and Blunt. This passive says that every dagger you equip gives you an extra 812 crit chance. That's a ton of crit chance, right? 2 daggers, that's over 1,600 crit chance. In a game where it's kind of hard to get crit chance right now, this is a very powerful passive, and it's why the meta is the way that it is at the moment. We're going to grab all the other passives because they apply to not only the ability, Deadly Cloak, but also our light and heavy attacks while using daggers. So very nice. And you know, the nice thing about having the daggers on the front bar is if you do run out of stamina for some reason, you can heavy attack, you know, get some stamina back. On the back bar, we've got the Destruction Staff, which means if you run out of Magicka, you can heavy attack on that bar and get some Magicka back. So you can pick and choose which resource you get back with your heavy attacks. And we're going to grab all the passives here because it is going to increase your sustain, right? It means you're going to run out of resources left and do more damage. We're taking Fire Staff because Fire Staff is just, well, it's the path to the most damage for DPS right now. Under Light Armor, we're going to grab all the passives because we are predominantly wearing light armor. If you have a piece of medium armor mixed in there, that's okay. Just make sure you go ahead and grab medium armor passives if you wear any medium armor. The more medium armor you wear, the more damage you will do, but you'll also be losing your penetration. You'll also be losing sustain. So it's a little bit of a trade-off between medium and light. If you're going to be predominantly soloing, I would stick to just about all light armor. It's going to be great for your sustain. It's going to be great for your penetration, and it's going to feel good. All right. And then under the Fighters Guild, we're going to grab the first 4 passives because we are going to be using Barb Trap. That's going to give us things like reduces the cost of our Fighters Guild ability, which is Barb Trap. It's going to be 15% cheaper. Increase our weapon and spell damage by 3% for each ability slotted from this line. So we get 3% extra damage just by having that slotted. And then Banish the Wicked says we get 3 ultimate whenever we kill any enemy just by having Barb Trap slotted. Great for our ult regen. And then Skill Tracker says our fighter skilled abilities deal an extra 10% damage. Nice, need it. Then next we're going to get Undaunted passives, both of them. These are going to give you more resources. So your max value for your resources is going to be increased. And then also whenever you grab a synergy, you're going to get resources back because of these passives. So really nice to have. They're good for your max resource values and good for your sustain. Then under Assault, we're going to grab Continuous Attack. This is a free 30% move speed buff all the time, anytime you're on your mount. So you get on your mount, it's moving 30% faster. That's like having 30 days of mount upgrade time on your mount. And you get it just by putting 1 point into this passive. So do it. In order to unlock this, all you got to do is go to Cyrodiil. Don't PvP anyone. Just do the zone story there. Open up your map, click zone story on the left, open up your map, click zone guide, and then click start zone story. Do that when you're in Cyrodiil. After 5 minutes or so, you'll be level 3 in Assault, and you will have this passive unlocked, and you can go ahead and grab it. If you skip part of the training and it doesn't quite get you to level 3, do 1 battleground. You'll be level 3. You'll have it unlocked. Grab all of your racial passives. These are going to be great. And then finally, last but not least, under Alchemy, get medicinal use level 3 when you're able to. This is going to make it so that your potions last as long as your cooldown, right? So potions by default will only last, the good potions will only last like 35 seconds. But if you get this passive, they'll last 47 seconds, which means potions have a 45-second cooldown. The potion will now last 47 seconds, so you can have above 100% uptime on your potion buffs. And potion buffs in this game are huge, right? Because you're getting that 20% extra damage from Major Prophecy, you're getting the extra crit chance, you're getting extra regen, right? So having 100% uptime on those buffs instead of 75% uptime on those buffs is a big difference maker. Let's go ahead and talk about that rotation that we briefly mentioned. So the rotation on this class is what you're gonna do is you're gonna start by pre-buffing, which means you're just gonna cast anything that you can cast without hitting the enemy. So we're going to pre-cast our Shade, get him up for 22 seconds. You can go ahead and pre-buff with a shield at the very end of your pre-buffing if like you want to run into the fight with a little bit of HP if you're worried about it. Don't need to do that though. So definitely start with your Shade, then come to the front bar, make sure you Merciless Resolve is up, then your Deadly Cloak. Now you're ready to engage. You can go ahead and close in on enemy, start casting your Wall of Elements, your Twisting Path, Debilitate, come back to the front bar, get your Barb Trap down, get it proc, and then you go to town on them with your Swallow Soul, which will be your spammable until you get to 25%. And then when they're at 25% and below, your spammable will now be Impale, so long as you don't need the health from Swallow Soul. If you feel like you're getting low on health, you can go ahead and start Swallow Souling, get the health back. Otherwise, you're good with Impale. And that's it. That's really it. Just to recap, you're going to pre-buff with your Shade, with your Merciless Resolve, and your Deadly Cloak. Then you're going to lay down your dots, which is everything except for your Swallow Soul and your Impale. And then you're going to use your Swallow Soul anytime all your dots are ticking and all your buffs are up until you get to 25%. At that point, you Impale. As far as your ultimate's concerned, what you want to do, the best use of your ultimate on the Magicka Nightblade is get all your dots ticking, get 5 stacks of your Merciless Resolve ready to go. So you got your 5 stacks, boom, you pop your Incapacitating Strike, and you immediately follow that with Merciless Resolve. So this 14,000 damage proc is going to be hitting way harder than that because you're going to have a ton of buffs running, and you're going to have this extra 20% damage from this Incapacitating Strike. So this Merciless Resolve is going to hit like an absolute truck, dude. And it's going to heal you for 50% of the damage it does, which means it's going to take you back up to full health almost every time. And then go ahead and just keep going into your spammable until that 6 seconds is up. Go ahead and, light attack, weave all your dots and buffs back up again. Use your Merciless Resolve, go through your rotation, and then all of a sudden your Incapacitating Strike will be up again, and boom. You lay that sucker down, follow it with your Resolve, right? Same thing. And that's it for the rotation. Really straightforward once you kind of get into the habit of it. That was a lot of words to describe something that's really easy to do. It's you'll get it. You'll start to feel it. Don't worry about it. And next for the champion points, we're going to go ahead and send you to the website. I have a long list of champion points there and the order that you spec into them. It's so much easier to read than me just sitting here and reading them out to you and the number and the value for all, there's a ton of them. Spoiler. So check out the website and follow the champion point guide down at the bottom of the build there. And really take advantage of that build guide. We put a lot of work into them. Also, I stream on Twitch. Be sure to swing by my Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/luckyghost. You'll find me streaming ESO as well as like a host of other MMOs. I'm an MMO degenerate. I love these things. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video. And if you enjoy my content and you want to support me, make sure to click the link to become a YouTube member. And you get perks like access to a private Discord channel for my YouTube members and my Twitch subscribers. And you guys can just ask me anything you want there. Take advantage of that if you want to, you know, by clicking the link down in the description below to become a YouTube member. And I think that's everything for this build. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. Also check the website. The answer's probably there, but I'm happy to answer it either way. See you in the next video. Take care.